Hi everyone, Patricia Worby, Alchemy Therapies here, and this is part 2 in my video on the important information about coronavirus and what it's telling us about the links to the microbiome. In the first video I talked about how I became interested in the microbiome, what it actually is, how it links with the virome, which is the equivalent for viruses, how we're bathed in the air and the soil full of viruses and bacteria and fungi, and how in fact they inhabit our body, on our skin, in our gut, just about everywhere, and what that means for the understanding that we've been given about this one virus that is now apparently causing COVID-19. And I was basing my comments on a very important video recorded by Dr. Zach Bush. And there was a lot of information in that video. It's over an hour and 22 minutes long and is very comprehensive. And in my summary, video 1, I covered only a small part of that. And I talked about links with ecology and the soil and agriculture and industrialized medicine. And I tried to sort of summarize what he was putting across. And then in this second video, I promised I'd talk a little bit more about what we can do and what we can actually do to enhance our immunity and protect ourselves. Well, not even protect ourselves, but actually become more balanced in our relationship with the virome. And I thought I'd cover, first of all, the nature of sterility, because it's been, right from the beginning, we've been taught to fear germs. Even before this virus came along, we were able to buy antibacterial products in the supermarket. But as soon as the virus hit the news media, sales of hand gel, antibacterial hand gel, actually skyrocketed, and you couldn't get any for a long while, along with toilet roll for some reason, and all sorts of cleaning products. And so the notion is that we have to protect ourselves by cleaning all bacteria and all microorganisms off the surface of our hands, because unfortunately antibacterial hand wipes do tend to kill all the bacteria and many other organisms besides. And what this does, it gives us a false sense of security, I think, that somehow we're now free. But it may still exist on other parts of our bodies, it may be on our clothing. And in fact, we shouldn't fear it as much as we are doing, because actually the people who are getting seriously ill with this have generally other issues, comorbidities as they're called, or they're on certain drugs that predispose them, or they're elderly and their immune systems are already weakening due to age. So I'm not saying don't protect yourself, but I'm saying we need to look more honestly about what the best ways to protect ourselves are. And I have long said, right from the beginning, I've said that the pandemic of fear was a big driver of immune dysregulation, because when you get afraid, your body naturally does not put enough energy into your immune system. And so it actually will make your immune system worse. So it's very interesting. I would not use hand gel. I would stick to soap and water, which is classic, but I would also be very wary of any antibacterial products right now, because what we want to be doing is enhancing the balance in our microbiome so that we can fight the bugs properly, the parasitic bugs or the pathogenic bugs, the ones that cause us disease and illness. When we see disease, it's usually because there is an imbalance in this microbial homeostatic arrangement, like the community, the ecosystem within. And so just killing randomly some parts of that without understanding what we're doing is not necessarily the best way of going forward. And what we should be looking at is enhancing our immunity naturally, which I've talked about through food, through supplementation, through healthy exercise in daylight, and maximizing our hope and our joy and our connection with other human beings. And what we have seen during this virus, we've seen a lot of focus on the negative, on the fear-inducing scenes of panic. We saw that initially in Italy and China, and then it came over. through the rest of Europe, and it's now moved, you know, across to America, and it's in South America as well. And still the message of the media is be very, very afraid. And we're learning to be afraid of our bodies, of germs, of each other, of the earth, you know. And getting dirt on your hands is actually one of the best things you can do, to go out into the soil and actually get dirt on your hands, because we're too sterile these days. Our homes are sterile and they're toxic as well. And we get very little daylight most of the time. Lockdown has changed that to some extent. If you've had the ability to go out and you've had a back garden, for instance, or you were able to go for walks, you have been able to get out into daylight, which is so important. But prior to that, the kind of lives we've been living are very much about being sealed in our homes, sealed in our cars, sealed in our offices where we work, or shops, or wherever it is, the buildings that you work in are likely sealed in areas that have very poor airflow. You either have you know, artificial airflow through air conditioning, or very minor airflow through windows and so on. And there's a lot of electromagnetic radiation coming from computers, from lights, from heat sources, and often very little in the way of healthy air, healthy connection with air. And so actually what we're seeing is high levels of pollution and off-gassing in those environments. In the home in particular, it's one of the worst places, particularly if you have new carpets, new sofas, which are all treated these days with noxious chemicals to keep them clean. So it's worth understanding that we're a community of organisms, and we need to respect that community by eating a varied diet, by making sure we have lots of fermented foods in our diet. Fermented foods naturally contain bacteria, and by fermented foods, I mean not just beer, which is the obvious one you'll be thinking of, beer and wine, things like yogurt or kefir, sauerkraut, kombucha. There are various products that you can buy. Even your standard pickles and so on are fermented to some extent. And they naturally contain bacteria which help to repopulate our gut and keep us healthy. We need our microorganisms, and just sterilizing them, whether it be with antibiotics or whether it be with hand gels, is not a good option. The other thing we need to look at really is the bigger picture, and how we live in relationship to other people, and how we've been taught that we're individuals competing for resources, and we have to be selfish therefore in order to get what we need to the expense of others. And I think we've seen this with, you know, food queues and people hoarding and empty shelves early on in the crisis. That has obviously reduced now, but as we're getting back to normal, we do see more this notion that I am going to survive at any cost compared to you. The notion of competition as a driver. And what I would like to see in a new world, I don't think it's going to happen after this virus, because I don't think we've had enough of a shock actually. But ideally, if we could change, I'd like us to see more cooperation in the world as a model for humanity, that we're not all vying for a limited resource. We are here to cooperate, and it's more of perhaps a earth-centered awareness. It's how nature works, you know, in perfect balance. If one thing gets out of balance, nature has an answer to bring that back into balance. It's survival of the most cooperative. We've always been taught that it's survival of the fittest. The fittest tends to be the most cooperative organism in any situation. And when viruses come along like this and seemingly devastate our health, it's usually because something has predisposed the body to become out of balance in the first place. And there are many things that have contributed to that. Pollution is number one. I talked a little bit about how pollutants lodge in the body, in particular in the lungs, particularly particulates below 2.5 microns. So diesel particulates are pretty bad as well. But also There are other things that we do, like we live very stressful lives, constantly on the move. We never stay still. We don't take time. We don't communicate with each other. We don't build our communities to be sustainable. And that I would love to change. I would love us to not be reliant on commercialized growing, industrialized agriculture, industrialized medicine, where we just pop a pill for every ill, regardless of what's going on in our actual lives, that we might be able to do something about if we were willing to put the work in. And if we had the right information, which, to be fair, we haven't been given it during this crisis either. What we've been fed is that coronavirus, this particular coronavirus, SARS-CoV-2, causes COVID-19, which causes high death rates. And at each point in that chain, there are some issues. So SARS-CoV-2 is one of many viruses. It's just one we've identified as novel, in that we hadn't seen it before. That doesn't mean it didn't exist, it's just we hadn't looked for it. Causes COVID-19, the disease? Well, people, the vast majority, actually over 50%, it seems, are asymptomatic. So it's only causing disease in those who are already weakened in some way. And that causes death. Well, a large part of the reason people have been dying is because they already have this weakened system. There's a lot of fear around. They're isolated. They're often treated wrongly with the wrong treatment in hospital. That has been happening. Forcing oxygen into lungs, which have a problem with uptake of oxygen, simply causes the whole system to collapse, which is what's been happening. So there's mistreatment, there's isolation, there's fear, not being able to have someone around you when you're very, very ill, no visits, not even able to connect apart from remotely with your loved ones, makes a huge difference in your immune regulation and how quickly your body is able to fight the virus. So I think we've been causing deaths by isolating people and not protecting the ones we really should have been protecting by removing the things that made them vulnerable. We've not, treated people in a way that was individual. We've treated everybody the same. And I think if we come out of lockdown, what we need to look at is how we each need to take responsibility for our own risk and help each other, to become aware and to do the right things for each other. So I foresee that actually what will probably happen is this virus will peter out, maybe till the autumn and the winter. There might be a slight resurgence as we enter the winter time with low carbon absorption. As you've seen, that can be a pollutant problem. And then possibly by next spring and summer, again, it'll probably die out again. But there will be another virus because we are putting such pressure on the microbiome to adapt because of our practices of growing monocultures, sprayed, chemical, and industrialized meat production as well is another big factor. And I think it calls us to do something differently, to live in more harmony and to look at our place in this bigger community on which we are so dependent. The notion that we are superior and our science is superior to nature is an overstatement. We haven't even begun to understand how nature works. We're getting some clues, but we are nowhere near as sophisticated as nature is. And it is hugely egotistical to think that we can overcome these things simply by vaccines or, pumping our bodies full of chemicals to fight things, when actually a more natural approach would be to enhance our body's natural capacities in ways that I've already covered. So I want a different world. I want it to have been engendered by this shock that we've had, but I fear that it hasn't been enough and that we will probably return to a semi-normal. But if there are any lessons to be learned, I think it's take more care of ourselves, each other, and our planet. And, try and be humble, because we don't know everything. I don't know everything, but I'm trying to learn. And if I get things wrong, I can admit that I didn't know, but I'm not going to dictate to other people other than that which is proven to be correct. And as we know, certain things do work. We do know this. For instance, one of the factors that's come to light is people who are given the flu jab tend to be more vulnerable to coronaviruses in the following year. So what that means is that's another factor that we've not looked at, and maybe it makes us question the whole notion of vaccination. I'm not specifically anti-vax. I've written a book about this. I'm not particularly dogmatic about that. In some circumstances it may be necessary, but we have to understand that vaccination is no substitute for true immunisation, which is where the body adapts naturally to the antigen. And some vaccinations actually make you more vulnerable, as do some drugs make you more vulnerable and give side effects of other things. I think we need a whole new form of medicine which enhances the body's natural ability to heal. And that's what naturopathy offers, and functional medicine. And I think we're moving to that more and more, and that's what we need. So thanks for listening. I hope it's been useful, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.